Here's a quote I'd pulled for Martin Luther King Day. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. I think that's critical. I think it's really important to understand our bid to run is an optimistic and positive one. We're not running against anybody. We're not running on a particular axe to grind. We're running on affirmative issues that I think matter to average citizens. And that's the reason we're here today. And quite frankly, any movement, any mission is bigger than one person. So I stand with my fellow citizens, friends and family, and others that couldn't make it today that have reached out to us via social media, and neighbors and others when we see in the supermarkets, to say we can do better. We've got great things going on here in the city of Lubbock, but we can build on those things. We can be more open, more accessible, and those are critical things. And I think that's the mission, that's the movement I hope that we can build. I saw a billboard this morning as I was coming back from a business meeting that said, Lubbock's the friendliest place. I think Lubbock is the friendliest place. When I talk to people from outside the community regularly, they say, man, what I love about Lubbock is the people. What I want them to also recognize is that the people are great, and we can strive to have a local government and all levels of government, quite frankly, that strives to be as great as our people. So with that said, I'm here today on this fairly cold day, looking towards downtown in the western part of the city to say that if elected, my intent is to be a mayor for all residents in all parts of town. And I think that's important for us to strive for. That's the goal, is if elected, more inclusion, more open government. And with that, I'll move into a couple areas. I think some of the areas that I want to build on that we've looked at in the past are partnerships. Some of the things we did previously was to work with the sheriff and the sheriff's department via our council, our management, and the police department to achieve a situation where we're able to get out of the liability of detention and save taxpayer money, and also improve customer service and public service delivery in general by coordinating a partnership where the county directly receives those that have been detained. I think we can do the same thing when we were looking at a library. The issue was, what can we do to look at some renderings? What can we do to develop some designs without having to pay a bunch of money and some sort of out-of-state consultant, which is far too often the case. We're able to do that by coordinating with Texas Tech University. And that's something else I'd like to see us build on, partnerships and simply looking at innovation. Far too often, people in public life either look at it from when budgeting occurs as either let's cut services or let's raise taxes. There's a third option, and it's to be innovative. And I think if we can put a man on the moon, we can strive here in Lubbock and elsewhere to achieve best practices and to think outside the box. So my goal is to continue to hold the line on taxes and also work to hold the line on fees, but also innovate so that we don't have to say we're either going to spend more or we're going to have less. I think there's a different way to do it, and I think that's what we've got to strive for. And in terms of particular issues, my chief priorities will continue to be what they were when I was first on the council, which is to take care of those things that are most urgent: water, electricity. 2019 is obviously a very big issue. We've got to keep the lights on, and we need to do it in a way that also strives for best practices. I think the current council working in terms of ERCOT is the right way to go. And I think we should continue to look and see what we can do to make sure that happens. That will be a hallmark of this next council, is to finalize that agreement. It's been many years in coming, and I think we're getting there. We need to finish that deal. In terms of water, we got to continue to stay on top of that, but also basic core services. Quite frankly, we need strategic planning. If elected, that's something I'm going to absolutely take on, and hopefully on day one we can begin to move in that direction. The other thing is contingency planning, whether it be a snow event or a tornado or some other, God forbid, natural disaster, small or large. We've got to have contingencies in place, and we've got to have solid communication so that the public knows from the beginning hour and, quite frankly, 72 hours out what the plan is, and on an hourly by hourly basis continue to keep them abreast. Some of the key issues, if elected, will be along that line. In addition to strategic planning and contingency planning, I think in Lubbock, Texas, sometimes we have too many rules on the rule book. I'm a very limited government libertarian-minded individual, and I think, quite frankly, it's not unrealistic to look at what we have on the rule book in terms of our ordinances and see if we can refine those and reduce them down, streamline them. When we have too many laws, where only one is needed. It's corrosive to the process, and it's morally erosive to the system when they're not enforceable. So I'd like to see us take on a sunset review. If elected, that will be one of the first things I bring up, to see if we can get citizens on the job as volunteers looking at a task force to address that issue. And then a couple other things. As a private citizen and as a former council member, I know it's important to have access to information so you know what's going on. Far too often you have to fill out a Freedom of Information request for information that really should already be available. So one of the things that I think we ought to look at is best practices. Can we have a website that really downloads as much information as possible, so that whether you're a member of the media, a member of the public, or just a concerned citizen that's curious about a particular issue, you should be able to find it as easily as possible on a website. That's 21st century government. Private sector's doing that kind of stuff. We should be able to do that here in Lubbock and maybe be a model in the process for other cities to follow. A couple other issues. We look at neighborhood revitalization as a big issue. I'm a lifelong resident of Lubbock. I've served in neighborhood associations. I've been an officer in one. I think it's important for us to keep as much local control as possible. And we as council members learn what's going on when we listen and when we're out in the community. So I hope we can have more council meetings in the community and maybe leave the building from time to time to do so, because it's not unrealistic and it's not logistically impossible to do. So it's something I intend to do. I also intend to do lots of town hall meetings. We've done those in the past. I intend to continue to do so. And then just to kind of wrap up a few other issues, and then I'll take any questions that might be out there. Citizens Tower. That's at least $65 million. And we all know in government speak, $65 million means it's a lot more than that. I've seen council decisions before where we were given a number and it always wound up being larger, never smaller. So we're looking at least $65 million. That should be put before the voters to decide that issue. And if the public wants to go forward with it, then I'm all game. But I think the public needs to decide that, not simply a council. A few other issues, tornado sirens. We recently saw the snow event and we saw some of the challenges there. I think we can afford tornado sirens. I think that's a few $1,000,000 in a budget that can add to the layer of protection for, quite frankly, some members of society that either because of age or because of their budget may not have all of the equipment I have, smartphone, those other aspects. Can we have one more layer? I think we can, but I think the voters should decide that issue. So that too should go before the voters. And then lastly, I think we need to have a charter election. I think it's long overdue. Without getting into the weeds of it today, there are parts that are just simply out of date, arcane, awkward at best to work. Can we streamline our city charter, our city constitution? I think we can. If elected, that's something else I'll be taking on, and let the voters decide through a referenda what a new charter might look like. And at this point in time, I want to thank everybody that's been here, and I want to invite those that can't be here today but that are interested to check us out at toddrklein.com and also Todd Klein for Mayor on Facebook. Thank you all for being here. God bless you all. Thanks. Thank you guys. Thanks, Larry. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.